Hi there everyone, it's Russell. Welcome to the Reading Fabricator. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're reading lots of books. And my first review of the year is something I don't think I've ever done before, at least to my memory. I have to go back and check what I've done. But it's a graphic novel. Yeah, a graphic novel, comic book, whatever you want to call it. And it's generally one that is considered to be amongst the greatest, if not the greatest, graphic novel of its type of all time. The one that, at the time of release, of compilation of all the issues together, a lot of people referred to it as the bridging point between comic books, graphic novels, and literature, and referred to this one that I'm about to talk to you now, Watchmen, as a form of high art that should be recognized and respected for years to come, which it has been. It's always in on the list of the greatest of all time, and I'd never read it. I had the paperback graphic novel version of it. I bought it at I guess in America you call it a Comic Con. I forgot what they call it. Yeah, I think in Australia they call it Supernova. I bought it for about $50, and it was a beautiful, beautiful paperback version where the front cover was of the titular photograph, which is taken of the Watchmen, all just in their positions. Beautiful, beautiful cover. I'm not a big fan of the covers they're using now, but that one I was quite amazed by. I just had to get it. I've heard about this book. I keep hearing about it. I keep hearing about Alan Moore. And I've watched the adaptations of his films, films that Alan Moore himself has absolutely despised, even though I don't think he's even watched many of them, if not all of them. I've seen League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, From Hell, V for Vendetta, and Watchmen, and of those four that I've seen, the two that I really came to admire at the time, and even more now, are Watchmen and V for Vendetta. So I picked up Watchmen, and it was sitting on my shelf for years and years and years. I bought this paperback back in 2011. And then mid last year, I had the flood in the house, which destroyed dozens and dozens and dozens of books, a lot of books. Watchmen was one of them. It was completely destroyed. You couldn't even look at the pictures properly because there was just color was going everywhere. It was just absolutely ruined. So I had to resort to buying it on the Kindle, which came at a good price. I think I got it for like $1.90 or something like that, which is a really good price for it. The only issue is the Kindle that I have, I don't know if it's for all of them or if it's just the edition I have, only shows comic books / graphic novels in black and white, which didn't actually affect the reading experience at all. If anything, it improved upon it. It gave me a real noir sense of the story that's being told here. And I took the Kindle down with me down south. I live in Australia, and I was on holiday at a camping site in the southwest. And I figured, well, I'm there for 5 days. I can easily knock this out. Boy, was I wrong. I've read probably maybe 9 or 10 graphic novels in my life. Nine of those graphic novels I read, and finished within a course of 2 or 3 hours easily. Watchmen is like reading a book. It truly is like reading a book. I can understand the truth. I can understand the meaning of the term high art, because there are just as many words and lines in this book as there is pictures, as there is art. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. This is an incredibly dense piece of work. It's a first of its kind for me, and I know that there are plenty of others out there, and I'm sure the comic and graphic novel fans out there will be screaming at me saying, "Well, you got to read this. You got to read this. You got to read this." But keep in mind, I'm a novice to this type of thing, and I'm trying to expand my boundaries when it comes to reading, as of late, as of the past year. I went into reading Watchmen with preconceived notions, saying, okay, well, based on the movie, I won't like this, or I like this more, blah, 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 blah. And honestly, the reading of the graphic novel just completely just shattered all expectations. It's a lot better than I assumed it would be, with one section, which I understand why they changed it for the film, but the whole octopus thing was a bit weird in my mind, so I understand why they changed it to warheads in the movie as sort of a more talkative aspect of the arms race. It's still decent enough in the book, but honestly, this surprised the absolute hell out of me, and there are so many different styles of writing in this graphic novel or comic book, or I'm even going to refer to it just as a normal book, because honestly, half of this time that I spent reading this was more just reading all the different styles of writing that is going on outside of the traditional narrative of the story of Watchmen. If you distilled it all, if you cut all that out and just focus on the narrative of Watchmen, where they're trying to figure out who's killing the Watchmen and what it eventually leads to, that probably makes up 30-40% of the actual book. There is just so much going on here that absolutely just pushes the boundaries and really draws you in and gets you to understand every single character in a different way. Having only seen the movie up to this point, I used to think that the comedian was my favorite character, and that's completely changed now. I mean, once you get to the second half of the book, he's barely in it. But obviously, those of you who have read Watchmen understand that it takes place in sort of an alternate timeline of the 1980s America. And what I found absolutely astonishing was, again, just how much time is dedicated not only to the narrative at place, but rather of each character's history leading up to that point, and of different stories that are being compiled into the narrative of Watchmen, including the tale of the Black Freighter, which was quite interesting. Then you've got interviews that are put in here, fictional interviews with characters like Adrian, or known as Ozymandias, which is towards the latter half of the book, or in fact quite at the very end of the book, and it is my favourite portion of writing in the book, and I'm going to read some out to you later on. You've got the comedian and his history with Laurie/Silk Spectre's mum. Then you've also got the entire origin story of John, or known as Dr. Manhattan, which is an astonishing piece of drafting and drawing. It's a good chunk. It's like 40 pages of the book dedicated to him talking about it, but it's talked about in such a way where it plays with time. He's saying it's this time here, it's this year here, it's this time here, all leading up to this meteor shower that's going past Mars when he's on Mars after he exiled himself after the interview went badly when they were accusing him of giving various researchers cancer where he initially worked before the accident or after the accident. And you got Night Owl, who is obviously the straight man of the book. You have to have a straight man in there. And then you've got Rorschach, who I was a big fan of in the movie, but and he's fine in the graphic novel, and for the most part, it follows a pretty clear trajectory and narrative with him. The sections where he's talking to the psychiatrist are quite eye-opening indeed. But for me, the two characters that really rose up in the estimations are Adrian/Ozymandias and John, or Dr. Manhattan in particular. All these fictional pieces of history where John talks about after his transformation into Dr. Manhattan, he gets basically recruited by Nixon to go over to Vietnam, and the moment he's over there, the war ends within a week, and all the Viet Cong or Vietnamese soldiers, I don't want to be offensive or anything like that, they're dropping their guns and they're pleading to only surrender to him. So there's a wonderful frame where he's standing there like a god and they're all just bowing down to him. Certain frames like that in this book will have burned themselves into my mind, have etched themselves into my mind, and will never leave. The entire origin story of Dr. Manhattan is absolutely amazing. There's a brilliant piece of biography placements throughout the first half of Watchmen, because I think the actual book that I have has it distilled into, I think, 11 or 12 chapters each, or issues when they were released, but each issue/chapter begins with a picture of the doomsday clock, and the minute hand is getting closer and closer and closer to the doomsday, which, was scary at the time, but if you look at it now in today's society, where I think they got it at like 15 seconds at midnight, and you just laugh and you look at the book going, oh yeah, that'd be great if it was back at that point again. But Night Owl's, I forget his name, but I'm going to refer to him as Night Owl in a second, but Night Owl's father, he wrote this biography, and it's fictional obviously in the book, but parts of it are taken and are placed at the end of each issue for the first half of this graphic novel. And you learn a lot about the building up of the initial, what they were referred to before Watchmen as Minutemen, and how that all came to be, and how superheroes came to be in America. And what I got from it was the fact that this is the first graphic novel that I've read, and even looking back on it with the movie that I watched, it's the first time I've ever encountered a piece of media where involving the traditional sense of the superhero, where I left it and went, oh, thank Christ, thank Christ I'm not a superhero. Because, most superheroes, at least prior to 2008, 2009, when I think The Dark Knight and Watchmen came out, but you walk out of those movies and you get this absolute sense of joy that you want to dress up as them, you want to be a superhero, and then you come across those two films, and in particular Watchmen, in the graphic novel sense especially, you read that and you're like, oh God, that would be hell being a crime fighter or a superhero. It's just not worth it. There's all these historical placements throughout the book, references to the two reporters who basically broke the Watergate story. Only in this one, they didn't break it because it's implied that the comedian did something to those two. Talks about who was involved in the Kennedy assassination, and obviously the Vietnam War, the arms race of Russia, and them approaching through Afghanistan or the Middle East. It's just, there's all these little placements of history in this book here that have been just a little bit fractured, a little bit twisted to allow for the story to really blossom. And it leads me to really believe that Alan Moore truly did his research when writing this thing. I can't even imagine how many years it would have taken him to actually write the story for this. The artwork itself is good. It's very good. I do wish I read it in the traditional color form just to see what it looks like. But the black and white, which I associated earlier as being sort of like a noir style, is serviceable to the plot of the book. It works. But all in all, I'm truly amazed by what I've come out learning through this. This book is leagues ahead of everything else that I've read within this form of art. I think I've read, no relation to Zack Snyder, but I think there's another Scott Snyder out there who did Witches. Witches is a good book, although I'm still waiting for part 2. I did read the comic book of which I cannot remember the French title of it because that's where it came from, but Blue is the Warmest Color, which I was a big fan of the movie, so I thought I'd read that, and that was quite good as well. But they're all in a sort of just linear traditional fashion. They don't push the boundaries. They keep the scope narrow and focus on the emotions of a certain characters on a clear line of storytelling. This here just, it's like looking at a painting full of all 1,000 different things going on at once. You know, the thing that comes to mind is the art cover to Father John Misty's Pure Comedy, where you're looking at it and you're spending an hour just looking at every little thing, seeing what's going on. That's what it was like reading Watchmen. I honestly thought I could do this within like half a day or a few hours, and it took a long time. It took me as long as it would take to read like a 400-page traditional narrative book, because there is so much going on in here, just so much. And it's not just the inclusions of the fictional biography, the interviews that are in it, or even the inclusions on damn near every chapter of the Tales of the Black Freighter, which in some portions the lines from that comic book resonate with what's actually happening in the Watchmen universe on the panel, which is absolutely genius. But there's all these other ones that I'm not remembering right now. But it keeps building up on top of one another, leading to just a mastery of storytelling in this art form. I'm truly astonished. So I figured I'd read a section where a reporter has gone down to Antarctica. This is at the end of, I think, issue 10, maybe, where he's gone to talk to Adrian Veidt, or known as Ozymandias, and Adrian is the only superhero who has actually exposed himself to the public. All the other superheroes after the I can't remember if it was the Act of Freedom or something like that, but basically superheroes were banned in America, and so they all went into hiding or did their own separate things. But Adrian is the only one who basically exposed himself and revealed himself to the public, and used that as a way to sort of build up a fortune based on merchandising and all that sort of thing there. So there's a bit of corporate greed going on in there as well, and a play of morality as well, which is seething throughout the book. But there's a portion of this interview which I found very quite enlightening, and did not expect to see in a graphic novel / comic book. So this is partway through the interview. So the interviewer, known as Nova, says, "Returning to your costume career, why did you quit?" Adrian replies, "There are a number of reasons, but I suppose basically it boiled down to my increasing uncertainty about the role of the costume hero in the 70s. What does fighting crime mean exactly? Does it mean upholding the law when a woman shoplifts to feed her children? Or does it mean struggling to uncover the ones who quite legally have brought about her poverty? Yes, I've busted drug rings and I've been accused of being an establishment pawn for doing so. That happened a lot in the 60s. I've also uncovered plots by breakaway extremist factions within the Pentagon. For example, the plot to release some unpleasantly specific diseases upon the population of Africa, the exposure of which led to the New Frontiersmen denouncing me as a puppet of Peking, on the strength of my youthful travels throughout the East. I guess I've just reached a point where I've started to wonder whether all the grandstanding and fighting individual evils does much good for the world as a whole. Those evils are just symptoms of an overall sickness of the human spirit. and I don't believe you can cure a disease by suppressing its symptoms. That whole Contact 400 approach to our society's problems, I despair of it. It doesn't work. Maybe as a businessman I can do more good on a more meaningful scale. Nova replies, what sort of world do you see it being in the future? This is where it gets really good. Adrian replies, that depends upon us, each and every one of us. Futurology interests me perhaps more than any other single subject, and as such I devote a great deal of time to its study. Even so, technology is progressing at an ever-accelerating pace, and by early next century I would hesitate to predict any limitations upon what we might be capable of. I would say without hesitation that a new world is within our grasp, filled with unimaginable experiences and possibilities. If only we want it badly enough. Not a utopia. I don't believe that any species could continue to grow and keep from stagnation without some adversity, but a society with a more human basis, where the problems that beset us are at least new problems. This is the final section. Nova replies, you don't think there's a possibility we may have damaged the environment beyond repair, or that we might someday have a fatal nuclear showdown with the Soviets? Adrian replies, of course I do. I'd be ignoring the facts if I didn't accept those things as strong possibilities. As I said, it all depends on us, on whether we individually want Armageddon or a new world of fabulous, limitless potential. That's not such an obvious question as it seems. I believe there are some people who really do want, if only subconsciously, an end to the world. They want to be spared the responsibilities of maintaining that world, to be spared the effort of imagination needed to realize such a future. And of course, there are other people who want very much to live. I see 20th century society as a sort of race between enlightenment and extinction. In one lane you have the four horsemen of the apocalypse, Nova replies, and the other, and Adrian replies, the 7th Cavalry. I could have picked any section from this gigantic book to repeat to you. And initially it was going to be a section of the biography of, I actually think his name was Hollis, but he was the original Night Owl of the Minutemen, talking about his upbringing and his father working in a garage and the story involving the garage's manager, which I thought was quite a brilliant piece of writing. But then I got to that interview there, and that interview there in a way sums up the whole book, and it takes place, it's brilliant that it's placed in such a way that it takes place at the far end of the graphic novel, so you sort of have to work towards it, and then when you get to that interview you see exactly what Adrian's getting at. This is after everything's been revealed, obviously, and I think those of you who have most of you who have watched this would have already seen the film or read the book, so I'm already far behind when it comes to that. But as a novice to true art of the graphic novel era and of comic books, it's exceeded my expectations. I am a fan of the movie, the director's cut, involving the interspersed placements of the Black Friday and all that sort of thing. And I can't think of anything I've read that has come close to matching this. I've not read Alan Moore's narrative books. There's another one which I think has Fire in the title, which I actually do own, but I've not gotten around to it. And then he's got that massive, like 1,300 page Jerusalem book. And I understand that Alan Moore is, associated with the learnings of the more alternative belief systems out there, particularly the occult. But you don't really need to dig into the author's life to be able to understand what's truly going on in this book here. He seems to pick a subject matter and just devote his time to researching it and compiling it and putting together forth something that, in my mind, is also quite prescient and prophetic of the 21st century. The fact that it was written in the 80s and it's still as effective today as it was back then, if not even more today, I think speaks to the true power of literature. I said at the start of the video that there were a lot of people who sort of said that this book bridged the gap between comic books and literature, and it does. It truly does. There's just as many portions in this book here where you just spent reading all the writing as there is actually looking at the panels. So to my mind, this is classified as a high art and is indeed a bridge between the two. I should probably go around and read more of Alan Moore's stuff. I may have read The Killing Joke. I don't remember. If I did, it probably didn't have as much of an impact as Watchmen did. And I've not seen the TV show, and at this point I'm too scared to even try it. But as it stands, this has been a good start to the year. I'm really glad I read this. This is a fantastic piece of alternative history, of fiction storytelling, and just a more alternative way of showing superheroes in the current climate of the world, in particular America. It's riveting stuff. I'm glad I read it. I don't know if I'll read it again, because honestly it was emotionally exhausting and draining getting through it, but I guess that's the purpose of a book. If a book can make you sort of just take a step back and have to, interpret and think about it for such a long time, then obviously it's done its job. There's been very few books that I've read where I've basically finished it, sort of thrown it to the ground, going, all right, next one. This is one of those ones where, just like the high art of literature that I've read in previous years, it's up there at the top. I'm glad I read this, and I'm definitely missing out on a lot because there is a lot going on in this book. But as it stands, this has been a journey worth taking. True verbose writing on behalf of Alan Moore, and great artwork on behalf of, I think, Dave Gibbons. Yeah, sorry, I had to double check. It was Dave Gibbons who did the drawing, and he should get just as much credit as Alan Moore does for the writing of it. They work in brilliant conjunction with each other. It's a great partnership there. This has been a pleasant journey to go on, and I'm glad I shared it with you. Thank you so much for watching, and all the best. See you next time.